Here's the final faceoff, won by Richardson, back to the line, and that's it. The Coyotes erupt for 3 second-period goals and then ride the tremendous goaltending performance from Louis Domingue and hold off the rival San Jose Sharks for a much-needed 3-2 win as the Coyotes pick up their 3rd victory of the season and halt the Sharks' 3-game winning streak. What a game for the Coyotes tonight here at Gila River Arena.
All right, hockey fans, welcome into another episode of Coyotes Corner alongside Dave Vest. I'm Luke Lapinski. We're, Dave, about 3-ish weeks into the season now?
Yeah, close to it. 9 games for the Coyotes.
Yep.
3 wins, 6 losses, no overtime losses, so that's 6 points. Doesn't sound too great, but consider this fact. They've won 2 out of the last 3 games.
2 out of the last 3, and the last 6 games have all been 1-goal games, which is kind of the theme that we've been running with on the post-game show of late, just because there's times where you lose a 1-goal game and you get grossly outplayed, and then you go out and that's just kind of it. The next game's completely different. But the Coyotes, I thought, were showing a lot of progress. 6-game road trip to start the year, basically. They had the 1 home game, but with all the new pieces the Coyotes have, 6-game road trip is going to be tough for anybody, but for a team with 5 rookies and 4 second-year players and quite a few vets that weren't on this team last year, not the results they wanted going 1-5, but I think they pretty dramatically got better to the point where the team that came back from the East Coast was significantly, I think, improved from the team that went out there at first, and that's ultimately what you're looking for the most from a young team like this. And it showed. Now they're 2-1 at home this season. They won the last game of the road trip. They look a lot better than they did 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that trip perhaps a blessing in disguise. I mean, it's a lot to ask any team to go back to the Eastern time zone and play 6 consecutive games to start the season, no less. I mean, you mentioned the home opener came first, but essentially it was, here you go play 6 games on the road against Eastern Conference teams. The results 1-5, not great. Let's not sugarcoat it. But as you said, and I'll kind of underline what you said, I think it was a good experience, a good way for the team to bond. It was like the express lane of team bonding.
It's tough in the moment, and you look at it, they never even really had a break. There was a stretch, and there was 4 games in 6 nights, 3 and 4 nights. Their only break this season until they got home was a couple games or a couple days before game 1 of the season, which doesn't feel like a break. That's just everybody waiting around to play. I mean, the season started on Wednesday. They played their first game on a Saturday, and then from there it's just been pretty much nonstop until they got home. And look, the New Jersey game was a 2-goal game. I get that, but it was an empty net goal, and that was a game. The point being, the Coyotes have been in all of their last 6 games with a minute left, and 2 of them they've won now.
Okay, so this is our first podcast since the season began. 9 games in. That's 1/9 of the season and change, if you will. What percentage is that, real quick?
It's like 11. I don't know.
Nice.
You always tell me there's no math, and then you throw this weird calculus at me.
That's excellent. We're 11% into the season.
Yes.
Talk to me about some things that you've observed, some surprises. Just what's jumped out at you in terms of this team, besides the win-loss record over the first 2+ weeks?
Well, there's a lot, really. I think we'll get to Jacob Chikrin in a second, so I'll leave that. The trio, and they haven't been skating together necessarily, but Jordan Martinook, Brad Richardson, Toby Reeder, 3 guys that are kind of asked to do a lot of different things up and down the lineup. They have all absolutely excelled to start the season. Martinook and Richardson are both putting up goals, unlike we've really ever seen them put up goals, at least the pace they're at right now. And Martinook actually had another one that got called back. It had nothing to do with him. They called goalie interference in the Philadelphia game at the end of that road trip. But I guess I'll focus specifically on Martinook. He's kind of the forgotten rookie last year because he's not like a headline-grabbing guy. But we talked about this last year. He can put the puck in the net. He did that in junior. He wasn't asked to do that here. And so if he was on a team where he was the only rookie last year, I think he would have got even more national attention. You see all the lists of the top 50 rookies or first 2-year players last year, and he wasn't on any of them. I can tell you that that's somebody that Dave Tippett feels like he can lean on and rely on to do pretty much anything, and it's only his second year in the NHL. And if on a given night that is score goals or play center, he'll do it.
He's already got 3 goals this season in 9 games.
Should have had a 4th.
He had 9 all of last season.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think what you're seeing is he feels more comfortable here. He knows he's going to be here. He belongs here. He proved himself. And now I think you might see a little more offense out of him as we go forward here. His plus-minus is at 0, and he plays a lot on the PK. So
yeah, that's the other thing. He's on the PK. He hasn't sacrificed any of the responsibilities he had last year to suddenly step up offensively. He has clearly evolved. He's only been on this team for a year and 9 games.
who else?
Well, Richardson, I think, has been impressive, certainly. Tobias Reeder, the penalty killers on this team have been impressive of late. I know the penalty kill overall is not where they want it to be, but they do have 3 shorthanded goals, which leads the NHL, or is tied for the NHL lead. And there's something to that because they had 4 all of last year. So anytime you can get a shorthanded goal, generally speaking, you're going to win that game because it's just such a momentum swing. So if you are playing a close game and the other team goes in the power play and you score on it, you usually win. So you can't count on those, but when you start to look at Martinook, Reeder, Richardson, all guys that can play on the penalty kill and score on the penalty kill, it's a nice little subtle weapon to have.
Jamie McGinn. He's only played 4 games, but boy, has he had an impact. I really think, and I thought this before the season started, that bringing Jamie McGinn in here was a great move. I think he's just a solid, professional NHL player. You know, he brings a lot of, not credibility, but I mean, he's just a real solid player that's needed on such a young and inexperienced team. He's already proving that in the 4 games he played. He missed the first 5 because of injury, but in these 4 games, 2 goals, 1 assist. I just think I'm expecting big things from Jamie McGinn.
Yeah, we talked about him on the post-game show last night, and I really think he was the most under-the-radar addition to this Coyotes team. 22 goals last year spread out over Buffalo and Anaheim. He got to 19 a couple years earlier. Right in the prime of his career. He's 28 years old, but all the focus was on the second-year guys coming back, or even on Shane Doan coming back, or all the rookies that were coming in, or Alex Goligoski, or the guys you just drafted, Radim Verbata returning. And then it was like, oh yeah, Jamie McGinn, he scored 22 goals last year. He's physical. He, like you said, 2 goals and an assist in his first 4 games. I think he's made Anthony Duclair kind of get back towards where we expected him to be. He started a little bit slow, and then Jamie McGinn joins him on that line, and that line's been much more effective.
And Dave Tippett, I don't know if you caught some of his comments about Jamie McGinn, just his presence on the bench. Dave raved about it, how, he's just such a team guy, and he's very vocal on the bench in a positive manner. And once he slid in there, the team seemed to be different. It was just, things weren't going well when Jamie McGinn was not in the lineup, and he comes back, things are getting better, and it's positive reinforcement that he's providing. You got to go out and play, but there's something to be said for what's going on the bench while everything's unfolding on the ice.
Yeah, it's the little things like that you're right. If you're not performing on the ice, then you're just a guy that's happy. But if you are out there producing, then it's kind of a boost for morale. We were at the morning skate yesterday, and he just came up and just slapped Connor Murphy on the shoulder and just kind of startled Connor where he's waiting to run a drill. But he turns around and Jamie McGinn's smiling, and it's that little stuff that adds up over the course of an 82-game season. Because there are stretches where it's just a grind. You're going to, every single team, no matter, even the team that wins the Stanley Cup, is going to have stretches where they lose 3 or 4 in a row. That happens every year. And so there are going to be stretches where things aren't going your way, and you need that guy who you can count on in the room that's always going to bring that positive energy. But like you said, you have to, that person has to contribute on the ice, and he is.
Let's address the goaltending situation,
Okay.
Because, as I said, this is our first podcast since the season began. So, and I'm sure it's not news to 99% of the people listening today, but Mike Smith was injured in the 2nd game of the season, and he hasn't played since. So Louis Domingue goes in, does an okay job, not great, not horrible, mediocre, but this team doesn't thrive with a mediocre goalie. No. They need excellent goaltending, and I think we saw that on Tuesday night against San Jose.
Yeah, and I think you've seen flashes of it from Louis. There have been games. It's been tough for him because Mike Smith looked great at the end of last year, great through the preseason, great in Game 1 against Philadelphia, and then that's an underrated thing that's not even talked about that much. You start your 6-game road trip off with all these new players. Your goalie gets hurt halfway through the first game. That's going to throw you into a tailspin. So Louis is thrown into the fire in the middle of that game against Ottawa, and they get 2 basically perfect scoring chances right off the bat. But he's had some games that he has lost, and I'm sure there's goals he wants back, but they're always, he would give up a goal in the 3rd period, they'd lose 3-2, and that's the one he wants back. but he also made 4 or 5 saves to keep that game 2-2. So it was good to see him go out there and get that win on Tuesday over San Jose, because he was clearly the top player in that game.
That game before that against Colorado, when he let in the third goal, and he publicly took the blame for the entire loss because he let in that goal, that really motivated him. Lawson Krause was telling me after the game last night that Louis came in and said, guys, just put the puck in the net a couple times and I'll take it from here.
Yeah.
And he did.
He did. Against San Jose of all teams.
The key is, how do you bottle that? How do you get up for every single game as if you cost the team a game the last time out? I think that's a big key for Louis. And Mike Smith, we've seen him skating at the morning skate. He's not wearing any pads, but he's on the ice. So he is progressing towards coming back. But he's not going to be back for a little while.
No, I don't think he's like stepping in on Friday or anything.
No.
You're leaning on Louis Domingue for a little bit. But look, Louis showed last year that you can lean on him. You really can. And again, I keep going back to this, but they lost a lot of one-goal games, and I get why people look at that third goal, because he had a stretch, and Justin Peters came in and basically did the exact same thing. Played a great game, but let a bad goal in, and they ended up losing by it. Obviously, that goal is going to be amplified, because anything you do as a goalie, it's amplified if the puck goes behind you. When you make 5 or 6 acrobatic saves, like Louis did against San Jose on Tuesday, but also like he did against the Rangers on that game now a week and a half ago, they just kind of blur together of, oh, yeah, he made a couple good saves. But once the goal goes in, that gets forgotten because there's not a stat for really good saves. So I think that this was coming, and I think he's gotten close to it a couple games now. But he really – you could tell the game against San Jose, and that's a great story you just told because it kind of puts a bow on it. You could tell he wasn't leaving anything to chance. That second goal was with 10 seconds left. Nobody was on Mikhail Bodker. The game was over at that point. And Louis Domingue's the reason they beat San Jose, because the Coyotes – greatly outplayed the Sharks in the second and played them pretty evenly in the third. That first period, San Jose was all over the Coyotes and only came out of it with a 1-0 lead. You need your goalie to give you a chance to win. He did that.
Okay, we haven't talked about a few people here. Let's just throw out some names and briefly a quick thought or two on their season so far. Jacob Chychrun, you actually did mention at the top of the podcast. Thought on him, 18-year-old defenseman, playing more and more each game. You're seeing his minutes go up with each game. Quick thought on him.
23 and a half minutes in the game against San Jose. Was that stat jumped out to me more than anything else. There was 3 guys on the ice that played more minutes than him. One was Brent Burns and one was Oliver Ekman-Larsson. And it wasn't that much more. OEL, I think, played 20 more seconds. So that just shows the faith that the coaching staff has in him. Dave Tippett has said it numerous times that they weren't surprised that he was good. They traded up in the first round to draft him. I think they were surprised by how mature he is so quickly. Nothing seems to faze him yet. And since we haven't done a show since before the season, it looked like he was hurt in the first game. He took a really tough spill into the wall against Philadelphia, and he's come back stronger.
How about Oliver Ekman-Larsson? You mentioned him in passing, but let's put the microscope on him. All he's done in 9 games, 5 goals, 2 assists. I think the 5 goals lead the NHL defenseman, or at least it did yesterday.
It's not that far off the NHL lead just for players.
Right. He's quietly having a great OEL season. What do you say? I mean, what is to say?
I tell you what, it's a great way to
become
put
routine.
It. Yeah, that's the thing. We kind of assume like OEL's got them locked down. He'll shut down their best players, and he'll also score game-winning goals in overtime, and he'll just do his thing. That's tough to do consistently. It is so tough to get to the top, and he's at the top. I think in terms of a defenseman, like he can still be better. Obviously, he's still young. He can still improve, but he's one of the very elite defensemen in this league. And once you get to that point, it's tough to stay there. What I've seen a little different from him. And I don't know if you caught it on the TV broadcast, the last road game. He was really frustrated, as they all were, at the end of the New Jersey game, because there were, there's some things that went against them that maybe shouldn't have. But they came back, they beat Philadelphia. Second intermission of that game, the Coyotes had dominated the first period. They had let it slip back into a tie by the end of the second period. Todd Walsh talked to him on TV, and OEL basically didn't call anybody out by name, but he verbally, not just by example, said, we got to look like we actually want to play, and I think that's big because Oliver, when he does stuff on the ice, he can't just lead by example because it looks too easy for him. So he can't just be like, hey, make this amazing play. Not everybody can do that. But for him to become a more verbal leader, I think is big because eventually I think he'll be the captain.
Last guy I want to talk about is Max Domi. People are like, what's wrong with Max Domi? And my first response is, he's leading the team with 6 assists.
Yeah, and he's getting an assist basically every night right now. That's his game.
Right. I don't think a lot of people realize that. Elaborate.
Well, I remember talking to Max after he had the hat trick last year. And I asked him what it was like to get your first hat trick in the NHL. And it was like, his third or fourth game. It was very early in the season. He's like, well, it's weird because I'm not really a shooter. And I kind of laughed when he said it because puts the puck in the net when he shoots. But he is a playmaker. That's what he was in junior. That's what he was for Team Canada when they won the World Junior Championship. He is a playmaker first and foremost. And so that is his game. Max Domi would be fine scoring 10 goals and putting up 45 assists in the season. And I get that it's easy if you're not watching to just be like, Max Domi doesn't have any goals. What's going on? He had a 4-game assist streak in there where he had 5 assists against. Let me put it this way. I think he's one of the biggest reasons they broke out of that slump.
He's always around it.
He is.
I'm using air quotes, and only you can see that, and I'm only using one of them, so it's an open-ended quote.
Yeah, this could go on forever.
It's kind of awkward. But what I'm getting at is Dave Tippett always says, don't pay attention to the score sheet so much with Max Domi. Just watch him play and how much he's around scoring chances and how much he creates them. That's what he does, as you said earlier. That's his game. I'm not worried about Max Domi in the least.
Yeah, that's not a concern. Look, the first 2 games, maybe he started a little bit slow. It's your sophomore season, and when you hear the phrase sophomore slump, then you talk to players that have been in the league, and they say what that is not that the player has dropped off or anything. It's that now he's the focal point of every opponent. Not like Max Domi snuck up on people last year, but they probably didn't expect him to come out and put up a hat trick in his first couple games. Yeah, I'm not worried about Max Domi at all, and that comment coming from Dave Tippett is such a huge compliment because you remember he looked like he was ready to play right out of the draft, and then the second year too, and Dave Tippett sent him back to junior to be that player that's always around it. Max Domi has the skill. That's never going to be an issue. It's being around the puck all the time.
Okay, so let's provide the folks with some news here on November the 2nd. We just watched practice. The next game is Thursday against Nashville. After practice today, Dave Tippett was asked for updates on some of the injuries that have suddenly cropped into the picture here, or flocked into the picture. One of those.
I don't know if it's
Cropped
either one of those.
or flocked.
Crept?
I don't think so.
Maybe crept?
Crept.
If you're going to use English words, I would go with crept.
That has crept into the picture. Let's start with Martin Hansel. He played about 5 minutes in Tuesday's game, and then he disappeared. We didn't see him again. He wasn't skating at the morning skate, and then we learned later that he has some sort of lower body injury that he is nursing, but he thought he could play. Turns out he couldn't. He asked, he said, hey, I can't play. So he was not in the game in the second and third period. Today we find out day-to-day.
Yeah, so I guess the important thing to take away from that is he didn't get hurt in the game against San Jose. That was already an injury there. Tried to give it a go. Didn't work. As we record this, we don't know if he's playing Thursday, but day-to-day, not like some big serious thing.
Ditto for Toby Reeder, who left Tuesday's game after blocking a plethora
12 shots.
of shots.
Oh, now you can use plethora, but you can't use crept properly?
I was trying to redeem myself.
Yeah, he blocked a myriad of shots in that game. He had that penalty kill very early in the game. And the Coyotes didn't take a whole lot of penalties in that game, but he breaks up the pass along the blue line, comes in on a breakaway, shorthanded breakaway, nearly scores. Then same penalty kill blocks that Brent Burns shot from like 3 feet away. It looked like. I don't know how you don't get hurt on that shot. So yeah, Toby's tough. I would expect him back very shortly.
Michael Stone, we learned today, is likely not to play on Thursday. He's still dealing with upper body injury that he suffered against Philadelphia last week.
The Braden Shen hit.
So he's missed 2 games now. It's most likely going to be 3.
Yeah. I mean, you feel for Michael Stone because he went through so much this summer to get back on the ice. And obviously this injury is not nearly as serious as the one he suffered last year. But it was great to see him back out there because you know how hard he worked to get out there. Unfortunately, that's hockey. I mean, that's just that you're playing a high-speed game on ice against full-grown, very large men. I mean, there's going to be injuries. You hate to see it happen again to Michael Stone. It's kind of a fluke thing that it did. It's not related to any other injury he's had. It just that stuff happens. I mean, they miss him on the blue line. They certainly missed that shot.
So Thursday's game will be the 3rd in a row at home, and that seems to be the theme of November, home games.
Yeah, 7 of them. One of them already in the books, but 7 of them.
Right. That's huge, I think. The road games even aren't that far away. I mean, they're all relatively close to Arizona. There's a trip up to Anaheim on Friday, or over to Anaheim, I should say, if I want to be geographically correct.
I don't know how you view the world. Maybe that's up to Anaheim.
Then up to Colorado.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple Western Canada games. But the home games. Let's talk about that and how this team really needs to thrive and gather points with these home games, because the road, as we've seen, not only this year but the past few years, it's challenging for this team.
It's supposed to be. I mean, the road games are supposed to be a pretty severe disadvantage for any team, and certainly, you want to make your home building a very tough place for other teams to come play. And it's very early with this group, so we can't judge it too much. But they're 2-1, like I said, with that one goal loss to Colorado. So far, so good. The schedule should pay off the Coyotes a little bit for that 6-game road trip. They really shouldn't have to go east of a certain point in this continent for about a month and a half. And it looks like we're going to get that for the most part in November. So this is a good chance to just sort of grow as a team. I always go back to what Dave Tippett has said in the past of when you're at home and you have a couple days off, it's different than when you're on the road and you're sitting in a hotel room, basically. You can get those full practices in. You can implement new power plays, or you can work on skills, or you can work on little plays that you just as a team want to work out. You can't do that when you have a 20-minute morning skate in New Jersey after playing in Brooklyn the night before or whatever.
So Nashville's coming on Thursday. We've mentioned that many times. Winnipeg is coming this month. San Jose will be back here again. And then a couple of games I'm really looking forward to. The Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah.
They're going to be here on the 25th. And then before that, the Boston Bruins.
That's military night against the Bruins. That's a big night, certainly, promotionally wise. And then also you play a team like Boston that you only see once a year in your building. So that'll be a good one. We should make it clear it's not a bunch of easy teams coming here and this is going to be an easy month. It's just nice to finally have some games at home. The Oilers won, certainly. Connor McDavid, that sort of speed. We didn't get to see him last year because he was hurt. So to see McDavid and Max Domi, who I consider certainly in the top 10 in the NHL in terms of fastest players. Anthony Duclair is right there as well. The Coyotes, I think, have more team speed than the Oilers, but the top guys on the Oilers are so fast that's going to be a really fun game. That's one of those games where I can see you downstairs in the press conference room afterwards asking Dave Tippett about a 6-5 game, and Tippett's like, yeah, the fans love it. The coaches don't love it so much. But you know what? This is a podcast for the fans. They're going to love it.
Let's talk about Shane Doan. He's on the verge of, big surprise, more milestones.
Yeah,
and
he's going to have them all soon.
Because we have all these home games, it's more than likely that he'll do it at home, and that makes it 10 times more fun for Shane and for the fans. He's creeping up on 400 goals.
Yep.
Quick trivia question for you. How many NHL players have scored 400 goals?
92.
He'll be 92.
Okay.
So that's a very good guess. I'll give you partial credit.
I get full credit because we'll just not release this podcast until Doan hits 400. How's that?
Partial credit only.
Okay.
And then the other record he's approaching is the franchise assists.
Yeah.
What is it? Down to 2 to tie, 3 to win?
Yeah,
he's at
Thomas
551.
Steen's at 553.
Right.
Correct. And he just passed Dale Howard-Chuck. I tell you another one. I don't have the exact number, so don't quiz me on this. But one of the ones that really stands out to me, and this isn't a franchise record, but I think this one's going to mean a lot to Shane Doan whenever he looks back on his career, is the most games played with one team. I want to say he's 6th in NHL history, or he's coming right up on it. He's right there. And you start to look at some of the other players that have played their full career with one team. And I mean, is there a stat that encapsulates Shane Doan's career better than that?
No, there isn't, and you were right on. He's in 6th place. He's played 1,476 games, all with the Coyotes franchise. The guy right above him is Steve Yzerman. He's 5th with 1,514 games, so Shane will...
Should catch him this year.
Yeah. I'm knocking on my wooden desk here.
I don't think that's real wood.
Probably not.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a great milestone. And I thought you were going to go another one that I know means a lot to Shane, and that's 1,000 points.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, 1,000 points is... it's just such a good round number, and there's not, I know Shane always jokes about it, and he's like, well, look how many games I've played. Of course I should hit that. Well, playing that many games is an accomplishment in and of itself, and you wouldn't be playing those games if you weren't producing points. Somewhere along the line, they would have just been like, don't play.
Shane never takes credit for anything he accomplishes in hockey, although he does like to win the two-touch soccer game before, and is very vocal about that. He's also very vocal about his fantasy baseball success.
He is much more, he takes a lot more credit when it comes to fantasy baseball exploits and off-the-ice soccer games. But for all the stuff he's accomplished on the ice, he always deflects that attention to somebody else.
Okay, so excellent work
Thank you.
Very proud of you.
This is good. I feel like I'm being graded out.
We came into the podcast with nothing on the whiteboard, and we just kind of ran through these topics. It wasn't difficult with having not had a podcast since the season started. I think we could keep going for another 30 minutes here.
And it doesn't feel like it's been that long, but the season's moving so quickly now that we're into it. So, yeah, and look, it helps that the team is here. So instead of on the road for 2 weeks, this was fun. Dave will do this again in a couple of days, or probably a week or so, and hopefully a lot more good stuff to talk about. It's great to be talking about this team trending upwards already, because you and I talked about this so much in the summer. The biggest thing to look for with this group is they're going to be ideally getting better from game to game, week to week, but you never know how quickly that's going to start. And I really think, what was the third game of the road trip, David? There was Ottawa, there was Montreal, and then it was Islanders, Rangers, Devils. The Islanders game, they started to turn a corner. They didn't win it. Rangers game, I thought they had greatly outplayed New York, who's been one of the best teams in the league this year. Probably deserved at least a point in New Jersey, and they've been winning since then. So, good progress so far. Thanks to Dave Vest. Thanks to Doug Cannon for producing it. And thanks to myself for tolerating Dave for a half hour. And thanks to you for listening to the Coyotes Corner podcast.